morning, students. We're going to go through difference between population and sample. So when we talk about population, it doesn't necessarily mean all of everyone in the whole entire world. Population is everything you wish to study. So we could look at some populations that we could look at as all Cascade students. You could look at all students in Oregon, all Cascade students. You could talk about all students in Oregon. You could talk, so in a specific state, you could talk about in the U.S. You could talk about in the world. So it's just whatever we're looking at specifically. The variable is a characteristic of each member of the population. So this is like a variable. If we're looking at all Cascade students, we could look at the height of them. We could look at the, you could look at the weight of them. You could look at hair color. You could look at interests that they have. So do they like coffee or not like coffee? Are they going to go to college or not go to college? You could look at male versus females. So you could look at so these would all be characteristics that we're looking at. A variable is just what do we want to study? What do we want to look at? What are we interested in? As we go through, so we could go through some examples of different things as we look at. Okay, so first of all, a group of students were not happy with the quality of service they were receiving at their schools. Snack bar. To understand and improve the service at the snack bar, the students set about collecting data to correctly identify the problems. Students complained about two problems: the amount of time to get through the line and the frequent mistakes. So if I said, okay, what's the population that we're looking at? So our population would be a group of students who were not happy with the quality of service that they were looking at. Okay, so what would be the population if we're looking at their school snack bar? Okay, the population would be everyone that would attend the snack bar. So our population would be all those who, you could say, who enter the snack bar. Now, it's not just students, because teachers could go there, professors could go there. It could be parents come in, it could be friends come in from different places. So it'd be all those who enter the snack bar. Okay, so that would be our population. Then we go ahead and talk about, okay, what's our variable? What are they interested in studying? What do they want to know about the snack bar? Okay, so they want to talk about the quality of service. Okay, so our variable of interest would be the quality of service. Specifically, what exactly are they interested in? They correctly identify the problems. The students complained about two problems. So here we have two problems: the amount of time to get through the line and the mistakes. So these are specifically, we're talking about the time it takes to get through and mistakes that are made. Those would be our specific things that we'd want to look at. So if I were to look at the population, okay, all those who enter and use the snack bar, and then I would want to, we'd want to study, okay, how much time does it take them to get through and what mistakes are being made, okay? When we identify the variables of interest, just other things you could look at. You could look at how long it takes to get an order. That was the time. Quality of food, the appeal of the menu, busy times of the day, repeat customer, and then timeliness of the order. So those are all possible ones that you could look at. And again, the students were interested in the timeliness of the orders, okay? So those are kind of similar. And then the mistakes was the other one that they were looking at. All right, despite the popularity of the push or kick scooters, concerns have been raised about their safety. These scooters have sent nearly 9,500 Americans to the emergency room with injuries. Before you buy one, you wish to check out the safety issues. What is the population of interest? Again, so we look at population. The population would be, okay, so we're talking about push. It'd be all people who bought the scooters. So we don't really, So you don't have like a specific one or age group or range or anything. It's just everyone who bought it. Now, what would be two variables that we'd want to be interested in? The variables that they talk about is they have concerns about their safety. So you could say how many hospital visits. So you right here, you have 9,500 Americans to the emergency rooms. So what about these? You could say, what are the types of injuries? Is it a sprained ankle? Are they broken bones? Whatever you may look at. You may look and say, okay, recovery time. How long does it take for them to get it? You may say, hey, I'm worried about concussions. So you could say, how many concussions are there? And you could go through there. You may say, okay, what about males versus females? So these would be all types of variables that we would be interested in and looking at as we move forward. So the next thing we're going to look at is a sample. A sample is just a piece of the population. So if we looked at Cascade Christian students, a sample of that would be the statistics classes, any class like that. Freshmen, sophomores, juniors, seniors, they would all be a piece of it. All right, the reason we do take samples is because it's going to always come down to these two things, okay? Time it takes to get a whole population. So if our population were Cascade Christian students, that wouldn't be too bad. But if our population was every single high school student across the United States, it'd take too long to get everyone. It'd be too expensive, even just sending it through the mail and trying to get them to respond. And it may be difficult to identify. If I said every single Cascade or every single student across the United States, there may be some students who are homeless, and so you don't have any address for them. You couldn't reach them. There may be some that live in obscure places. So things like that you can't actually reach everyone. So these are always going to be, if you look at the reasons for taking a sample, it will come down to these three things: time, money, and the ability actually to sample everyone. So when you take a census, which we're doing now, is the study of the entire population. Okay, so the sampling error is the difference between the characteristic of the entire population and that of the sample. So when you think about this, okay, there's always going to be a difference between the population and the sample. They're never going to match up. So if I said like it's election time, last year it was, I forget the exact percentage of those who voted for Trump, but let's just say for purposes, 47%. Okay, of people vote for Trump. Okay, and that's from all those who voted. In any sample, very rarely are you going to get 47%. You're going to see a range of values. You could see, from 42% up to 53%, some range in values like that. So when we say, hey, okay, 47%, let's take this. This was our, from our population. Okay, that we took last time, all those who voted last time. Then we've done samples, and let's say the sample is at 43%. We'd say our sampling error is this 47 minus 43. So we'd have a sampling error of 4%. That's what that's saying right there. One thing to go through samples, I want to go through a couple samples. So if I went up here to this example here, we said our population was all those who bought scooters. We could say that the sample that we could look at would be, maybe we want to sample these 9,500 Americans who went to the emergency room. Or we could take a sample, we could take a random sample of those who bought it. We send out 100, we just randomly choose 100 people who bought scooters and get back a kind of a questionnaire about what they did. So we're going to look at that. We'll go through sample versus population. We'll look at that. Just to remember, the sample is just going to take a piece of it. So if it's saying, I wish to study Cascade Christian students, and I take a sample of every sixth kid that enters the building, or something of that. If I take a piece, if I'm not looking at the whole thing, then we're talking about sample as we go forward. So we'll do some examples going forward from there, a couple worksheets, and looking at the difference between population and sample.